Are we going on the webcast? Oh,
Yeah, are we
I'm
live?
starting it right now, Amir. Give me 1 second. All right, sir, we're live.
All right. Good morning, and thank you for participating in our remote meeting for the Permit Streamlining Task Force Subcommittee meeting. We will do our best to facilitate a smooth meeting with public participation. We ask that everyone be patient as we navigate together, as we navigate this together. We have two formats for participation, the Zoom web application as well as the teleconference. Before we begin, I want to review some guidelines and general instructions for the meeting. These are very important, so I ask that you pay close attention. Please silence your other communication devices such as your cell or desk phone. This will ensure that we are not hearing any feedback or causing interruption during the meeting. During the meeting, all participants on Zoom, except for committee members and South Coast AQMD staff, will be placed on mute by the host. That means you will not be able to mute or unmute your lines manually. After each agenda item, I will ask for public comments. For those on Zoom, if you would like to make a public comment on the Zoom screen, please click on the raised hand button. This will signal to the host that you would like to provide public comment, and you will be added to the list. If you're using Zoom on your smartphone, please tap the raised hand button on the bottom of the screen. For those calling in using the phone line only, you can dial *9 on your keypad to signal that you would like to comment. Your name will be called when it's your turn to comment, and the host will unmute your line automatically. Please note, you can hang up and or leave the Zoom meeting at any time. For the matters of decorum, please adhere to the speaker time limit. Please treat others with courtesy and civility and respect the public meeting process. Rules prohibiting the use of signs or posters remain in effect for video participation. Profanity, discriminatory comments, or obscene gestures is prohibited. Disorderly, unruly, or aggressive behavior that infringes upon the rights of others or disrupts the good working order of the meeting is also prohibited. Any violation of the above rules can result in your mic being mute, your video feed shut off, or you being dropped from the phone or the Zoom meeting lines. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Nice to seeing you all. Amir Dejbakh, I'm the Deputy Executive Officer for Engineering and Permitting. And now that we have gotten over our housekeeping remarks, I guess we can start the meeting. Do we want to take a roll call of the committee members that are here? Rula, can you go over there and see who's here and who's not here?
Judy York, David Rothbard.
Here.
Denise Carlton. Bill Lamar.
Here.
Francis Keeler. Bill Pierce.
Here.
Okay.
That's it? Okay. All right. Well, typically we go around the room. I'm not sure, but thanks to the Zoom, we will just limit to the people that are actually on the committee. And then, of course, anybody who wants to make a comment, you're more than welcome to push the raise hand button, and we will respond to your comments or questions. Can we go on the slides, please? Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. All right, so on today's agenda, we have a couple items that we're going to be discussing: pending application inventory, where we are with our dashboard, online tools, permit processing handbook that we're developing, and then some other issues and any other issues that the committee wants to bring up. Next slide, please. So let's start with the pending application inventory. Next slide, please. So as of end of November, our total pending applications is at 3271, and that's 55% lower than our starting position, which was at 7348. We're doing our best to stay below the numbers that we achieved, that 50% number. And however, as you can imagine, the last meeting that we had was back in June. That was about 3 months into the pandemic. And now 9 months, 10 months later, we're still dealing with the pandemic, and we're still dealing with the changes that we had to put in place. So keeping the numbers at the levels we are, it's been challenging, but we're doing it. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so this slide goes over the total inventory of applications that we have, that excluding PCs, meaning this is a real inventory of applications that we haven't worked on. Now, we have an internal goal trying to keep that number between 2250 and 2500, and we've been fluctuating up and down, but so far we have managed to keep it below 2500, and we're keeping a very close eye on it. Hopefully, we're going to be able to maintain it for the remainder of the year, but we'll see what happens. Next slide, please. So what we're doing and dealing with the pandemic, I think this slide is basically another copy of the slide that we have provided with you guys originally back in June when we met. We're still telecommuting. 80% of the staff is still at home. We had to make some adjustments throughout the last 10 months, meaning we actually were bringing more people into the office. We went from 20% telecommuting, not telecommuting, to almost 25%. And the reason for it was that, we found out that we need more of the staff in-house to make sure that the folders are being put together, and, they can deal with some of the issues that had to do with the internet and accessing the databases. And honestly, some of the Title V and reclaim permits made it necessary for the staff to be in-house to put them together because of the complexity and just the size of the permit. As you can see, we have made some changes in the building. We have put more barriers between the people who, between our administrative staff and the staff that are in the office. And so far we had some close calls, but fortunately we have been lucky so far, knock on wood, and I'm hoping the trend continues. The building is still not open to the public. However, we have enlarged the size of the box for the permitting applications that we received. So it's a much bigger box now. So if you come to the office, don't look for the small box, look for the larger box for submitting your applications. We're not going to the field visits. We contemplated in a couple of times to sending some engineers to the facilities because of some of the issues that the facilities was experiencing, but we stopped that because of the recent events. So we're still not going to the field, or if we decide to go, we will be very, very limited. And of course, we can't have any more face-to-face meetings, but it seems like the Zoom process has been working very effectively, and we've been able to do our business as much as we can through the Zoom process. Although I have to admit, going from one Zoom meeting to another Zoom meeting or staying in a long Zoom meetings is becoming problematic, but we're dealing with it, and hopefully this process will come to an end soon in the next 6 months, and then we can go back to normal business. I'm not sure if we're gonna ever go back to our normal business, but maybe bring back some normalcy to the process that we're having. Can we go to the next slide, please? So that basically covers the my pending application inventory update. But during the last meeting that we had, if you recall, Jill had made some presentation to the board with some graphs looking at the application trends and the emission trends. and the group had asked us to bring those graphs back to the next meeting, which the next couple of slides basically does that. So can we go to the next slide, please? So even though this is not an application trend, the first two slides, well, let me step back. The first two slides that we're going to talk about is basically the slides that Jill is providing to the governing board at this moment. So the first slide is looking at the NOx emissions and the emission trends. And what we tried to do was we were looking as the emissions being reported by the major sources in reclaim to their SEMs, and see and look at the emission trends and see if there is a drop in the amount of emissions that is being reported, and try to predict how is that going to affect our annual emission reporting for next year. Now, when we originally reported this slide back in, I think this slide originally we reported in August of this year. We were only looking at some of the data up to August, and if you look at the graph, you see the emissions reported during the first 3 months prior to pandemic was higher than the previous years, but it did drop down immediately after the start of pandemic. So originally we were looking at 20% lower, but now that we have tracked it from January till now and till October, and this graph is always 1 month behind because we have to, it almost takes us a month to go back and take a look at the SEMS data and validate those data. We're right now, it's about 6 or 7% lower than the previous year, which was a lot different than when we originally reported this number. Back then we were looking at 20%, but now it's dropped off to 6%. And honestly, we have to wait till end of the next, well, almost to the end of January to come up with what the numbers were going to be for the in 2020. Hopefully, the trend stays close to what was reported last year, which just means that the economy and the businesses are doing, that at least the major sources are doing okay. But we'll see, and we're keeping a very close eye on it. And next slide. So this slide is the second slide that Jill brings to the board every month and shows the number of the applications that we have received. So far, year to date, we're about 20% lower than what we had received in last year. So we'll see what happens in December. We do have some preliminary numbers for month of December, and in December itself, looking at the December number of applications that we have received, comparing it to the same period of a time in last year in 2019, we are roughly around 44% down. So if we are lucky, we'll have somewhere between 20 to 22% down by the end of the year. But it really depends on the number of applications that we receive in the next couple of weeks before we can make a determination what was the actual reduction in number of applications due to the pandemic. Next slide, please. So the next 4 slides that I'm going to go over with, we presented this initially at the June board meeting, and we were trying to see if there is a trend as far as the applications that we'll be receiving. And we were looking at several different parameters. And this next 4 slides, it's just basically gives us the information on different parameters that we were looking at. And then we try to normalize it, looking at the percentages, and then comparing the percentages of the applications that we have received for these categories and comparing them to the previous year. So the first slide, we looked at the type of applications that we're receiving. And type was, and then we went to, for doing this, we went and looked at the fee schedule as the metric for the type of type of equipment that we're receiving. So we knew that the equipment that fall under schedules A and B would be the smaller type of equipment: gas stations, dry cleaners, emergency generators, Schedule Cs and Ds would have been more of a type of applications that are not small, but they're not also large. It could have been boilers, heaters, plating equipment. So that C and D represents those type of equipment, and the remainder of the E, F, G, and H schedules were those would have been with the much larger facilities and larger equipment, which would have been mostly at the power plants, refineries, and larger operations that we have. And if you look at the two charts, January to November comparison to January to November of this year and last year, we are pretty much tracking pretty closely as far as the type of the applications based on the fee schedule that we have assigned. So, we're tracking pretty closely based on the fee schedules. Can we go to the next slide, please? The next one metric that we use, what we was trying to find out, are small businesses versus others. So we'll see if there is a drop in the number of the applications received by the small businesses versus, in 2020 versus last year. And again, even though the numbers, percentage-wise, were just a little bit smaller, but still it's within 1%. So it's not that much difference on the number of the applications from the small businesses that we have received in comparison to last year. Next slide, please. Then we also looked at the type of applications that we're receiving. Are they for the new facilities, or these were modifications at the existing facilities? And again, as you can see from the slide, it's pretty much tracks very closely as far as the new facilities versus existing facilities on the applications that we have received. Next slide, please. And then the next metric that we used was to see if the applications that we received are for new projects, or is it, the applications are being filed because of modifications or change of conditions. Now, as you can see, there was a bigger drop in the number of new applications, and it's almost 4% on the new applications that we have received in this year than the last year. And then the number of the change of conditions have also increased dramatically this year. Well, by 5%, not that much, but still, it's not tracking as closely as it was with the other slides. And for the, let's see, well, I take that back. That was for modifications. For change of conditions, it only has dropped by 1%. So just looking at the trends, we have received less applications for new projects than we did last year. A lot of change of conditions, and a small number of it, of course, still is for change of conditions. Next slide. Oh, I guess that's it. That's basically concludes my update on the applications inventory, and also the slides that we had provided during the board meeting in January 6th. Not January, in June of 2020. Like I said, although we're still tracking the last 4 slides, we're no longer presenting that data to the governing board members. We're still tracking it, and we're having it in our back pockets just in case a question is asked. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions and see if there's any questions from the members.
Amir?
Yes.
Bill Lamar.
Hi, Bill.
Hi. These, the last couple of slides, these little bump up in changes, are those the dry cleaners going from PERC to something else, or are those new, or would those be new permits?
No, they would have been new permits.
Okay, so they're not reflected in your numbers then yet.
Well, yeah, no, it depends. We are about 140. Well, no, I understand that. I think it's about 130 applications, or maybe even 128 applications for PERC dry cleaners that they're still active right now. So I don't think percentage-wise is going to make that much of a difference in the pie chart itself. And that's the reason why we went into a pie chart, because we were trying to normalize the data. Otherwise, the numbers would have been all over the place.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Sure, you're welcome.
And then we have a question from Carl Laney.
Okay,
We can unmute him.
is Carl unmuted? Hi, Carl, can you hear me? Carl, you're still muted? Okay. Oh,
No,
no.
am I
There we go.
Yeah, there we go. No, you muted yourself again.
on modifications, and
Okay.
we see a little bit of an increase in modifications versus new applications. I am curious if the district has taken a look to see how much of those modifications are BART compliance related versus facility enhancements and modernization outside of compliance.
So no, we haven't really dived into it that much, because, the board stopped looking into it. They didn't want, we'd stopped presenting the data, but no, we have not looked into it, whether it was a BARC related. Of course, there is going to be applications that we have received for some of the BARC rules, mainly for 1146, but the deadline for those applications were last year. It wasn't really this year. So we received a lot of those applications last year for 1146. Now, I know we are anticipating a large number of applications coming in as the future BARC rules requires submittal of applications, but I'm not sure if that makes that much of a difference. Now, we received a lot of modification applications initially dealing with COVID-related issues, meaning facilities wanting to change their process to manufacture hand sanitizers, for example, instead of what they were doing before. So we initially received a lot of those applications, but a number of those applications have dwindled down also.
Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. Hi, Judy. You're muted.
Yep, I'll unmute. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
I just wanted to say the switches to more electronic payments and things have been super helpful, and we've obviously applications, and for the most part they've been going very smoothly. So really appreciate everyone's effort, and it seems like given all the complicated circumstances this year, it's been really great that things have continued on really quite smoothly. It's only, something's very complicated. That's always complicated. So anyways,
Yeah,
it's been good.
thank you. And I really appreciate your comment, and thank you for saying that. We have tried our best. Believe me, we are tracking the numbers like a hawk. We're making sure permits are going out. We're making sure that if there's XPP applications, there is no drop as far as the services are concerned. But like you said, there are some, there are some complicated cases, and with that, we really can't do anything about it. We have to go back and forth, but we have tried to maintain the business as usual as much as possible during the last 10 months. And this has come at a price, because we have, and one of the items that bothers us a lot is because we have to bring in people to the office while everybody else is at home and they're being safe. But to make sure applications received are being handled within 4 business days. They're being assigned in a timely manner. They're being reviewed in a timely manner. We're doing our best to accommodate the businesses because we know how tough it is outside. And the last thing we want to do is be a burden for the facilities that are trying to modify their process or stay in business. And that has been #1 concern for us.
Yeah, and thank you. It has been tough, for a lot of people. And so it is really important, the efforts made. It's really appreciated. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Looks like we have a question from someone named Zoom user.
Hi, Zoom user. Can you identify yourself for the record?
Hi, this is Jason Lavanos with Maximum. How are you guys?
Thank you. How are you?
Pretty good. I apologize for being a little absent on the last few meetings. Fortunately enough for the spray booth industry, we've been fortunate to stay busy. My question is on the automotive side of the applications. How many people do you have currently working in the automotive division for new applications?
Okay, so our coatings operation handles the automotive spray booths. Now, there has been some changes in that team. Tom Liebel, who was one of the supervisors in that team, got promoted to a manager position in charge of our wastewater and energy team. So right now they are missing some key supervisors. We're going through the process of recruitment for additional supervisors, and hopefully before the end of the year, we're going to make some announcements. And then there has been some additional promotions in that team. So we lost another engineer to promotion from that team. So I think roughly that group of people that handle automotive applications, there are, I don't know, Jason, I think it's about
It's 19. We have, well, in that team, that coatings team, there is 19 staff. That it does include a couple of admin staff.
Right.
So, actual people hands-on applications, you're looking at about 17.
Right. So fully staffed, that team should have about 28 people. That includes all their administrative staff. But like I said, people have transferred out and got promoted. We're still doing business as usual. So promotions and transfers are still occurring in the district. But there has been a small reduction in the number of the permitting engineer in that group.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, everybody that I've had relationships with in the past, I mean, they're literally all gone. So
yeah,
going through some of the agony of dealing with new engineers and stuff like that is slowed down the process a little bit. Not major. Kudos to what you guys are doing. It's been okay. Again, it's as long as we inform our clients that it is a process and it's going to take some time, and there's challenges right now with COVID and everything else, but so far so good. I was just curious because it makes sense what you said about not having a supervisor for that department yet, because when I've asked that question, I really didn't get an answer. So I thought that was rather odd, but it makes sense. If you guys don't have anybody, then there's really nobody to make that call.
Well, not to worry. There's going to be announcements either by end of this week or next week. So we're going to be, we are going through the process. It takes, it is even our promotional and recruitments that we do internally, it's a process. So we have to make sure we follow our guidelines and the process that we have in place. So just bear with us. We are trying to staff that team as quickly as possible. But, if your applications are stuck for a long period of time, you always have my number, Jason's number. You guys can reach out to us and we'll see what we can do to get the applications moving.
Much appreciate.
Yeah,
Much appreciate.
We're aware of the brain drain. Some of the things we're presenting later in our presentation do address that in bringing new engineers up to speed. But just touching again on our teleworking efforts, of that 19 in that group, 17 are home teleworking and one's off.
Wow. Okay.
and just to let you guys know, how complicated this process has been. Applications come in paper because we're not there yet. As much as we are trying to get automated, we're not there. So we as applications come in, we have to scan them. The scanned copies go back to the team. Then they forward it to their staff. Then the staff are telecommuting. Then they prepare everything electronically. Then they have to put it back in the order where the application files look like. So when we send the application files to you guys under public records, there is some order to it. So all of this stuff is happening now. Half of it is happening here majority is happening in telecommuting, but a big portion of it also is happening here physically. So with all of that, again, we appreciate if you guys give us some time to, we're not there automated, but I just want you guys to be aware how difficult it has been to keeping the process moving the way we have.
I can imagine.
And if there is any delay, my apologies. We'll try to improve it, but bear with us.
So let me ask you this, with 19 on staff right now, expediting, is that still really even a valuable option right now?
Yes.
Or
Yes, it is.
okay.
We have the instructions for the expedited applications are that they take priority because somebody's coming in and working on the weekend on it. So we move it up. So it moves up in the initial process, moves up in the getting evaluated and reviewed. Review might take a little bit longer because of the shortage of staffing over there. But like I said, we're dealing with it, and hopefully by end of the week it's done. But then it also helps with the applications getting finalized and the permits going out the door.
Okay. And my last question is, are you guys, there had been some rumors of you guys providing some incentives for electric car manufacturers in South Coast. I haven't heard of anything. I haven't read of anything. But I am currently working with 3 different electric car manufacturers as far as putting spray booths in. And 2 of the 3 are rather large companies. And they were asking me about it. Their expediter team was asking me about it. And I didn't have an answer. I haven't heard anything. So I guess since I'm unmuted right now, I'll ask that question as well.
Okay, good. Go ahead. As far as the incentives, I'm not aware of any. You may want to talk with our technology advancement office, Naveen Berry or Matt Miyasada. They can give you additional information if district is giving incentives. But as far as the permitting, I know I was involved in permitting of electric car manufacturer. It's basically the same process. Nothing changes with the permitting part of it. But if you want to get additional information with the incentive money, you need to contact the folks in the technology advancement office.
Thank you.
What we can do is provide you that contact info offline.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.
Okay, any other questions from the members or the public?
Amir, this is David Rothbart. Real quick, do you have any suggestions for the situation where you may have a number of applications in and you have to get a project going and you have to pick and choose between the applications of which one to have staff pursue when they're all important? We're just trying to see, especially for the essential public service side, we want to make sure the sewage keeps flowing, and if there's a bottleneck on permitting, just seeing if you have any suggestions.
Well, David, I think you basically just told us what needs to be done. Which applications you guys want to do first? Because if you tell us which ones you want to do first, and we do that not just with with your industry, we also do it with other industry, mainly the refineries. The refineries continuously tell us which applications they want us to review first, and sometimes we have to remind them that, well, wait a minute, we have all these old applications that you guys come and beat us on later because it said, oh, I have a 5-year-old application that hasn't been processed, especially, and when you have asked us not to look at them. So if you guys tell us which ones you guys want to go first, we will proceed that way. Now the reality is, we only have so many number of engineers within each group, and so if the applications are as complete as it can be, and then you guys tell us which one you want us to do first. And I do understand sometimes all of them are priority, but at some point we also need your help, so you can help us in which one we should prioritize.
Fair enough.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Yeah, Amir?
Hi, Bill.
Hi. Yeah, going off of Jason's recent comment, he might be thinking about CARB. They had a recent announcement here this week. I guess it was early this week about a $20 million investment in clean trucks and cars, clean cars for all, and I forget. The zero emission truck and bus voucher incentive project. So you might suggest that he reach out to CARB or look on their website for that.
Okay.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, thank you very much. And then also you have to also realize, from the time the CARB puts money aside for an incentive, and by the time we get it, to distribute it, there is a certain amount of lag time. But please, follow Bill's suggestion. Do call CARB. But if you want to know when that funding might be also available, that at the local level, again, I would highly recommend that you contact our technology advancement folks. Thank you, Bill. That was very helpful. Thank you very much.
Right. We do have one more question from Allison Torres. Hello, Allison. Go ahead.
Hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, Allison. Yes.
Hi. Thank you so much for all the efforts you are doing to, keep the process moving forward. I think one of the things that we've noticed is a bottleneck in supervisor review, and I don't know if that's because of some of the staff changing, but I wanted to ask if there have been any efforts to kind of address that. We have quite a few pending applications, just to kind of add on to David's comments, and since they all go to essentially the same team, and there's been some staff shortages in that team, our processing is taking a while, and our projects, being an essential public service, just keep moving forward even in this time. So I just wanted to ask that.
Right. Well, so here's what we did with that group. There was one senior engineer who was vacant in that group. So the other two senior engineers that were there, they were basically helping out with the other side of the applications. That had to do with the loading racks and some other facilities that we had. So we have assigned a new senior engineer. We have promoted a new senior engineer to that group. So the senior engineers now are basically freed up. And we also have Tom Liebel promoted to that position. So he's looking at the entire structure of that team and how the applications are being processed. And I have tasked him to come back with me, because you're right. I'm aware that there are some a number of applications. Well, I don't have the latest number, but I'm aware that there was some amount of applications that were being delayed in getting reviewed. So Tom has been tasked to come back with the plan to get those applications out quickly and find out, what was the initial bottlenecks that we had experienced. But personally, I think it was because of we were missing a senior and a manager at that team. So I think hopefully in the next month or so, those don't quote me on it, but we're gonna do our best to see if we can move those applications.
Great, thank you so much. Appreciate that.
I do not see any further questions. You want to move
Okay,
back?
so if there's no questions from the members or the public, I'm gonna ask David Ono, our Senior Quality Engineering Manager in charge of our automation and administration, to give you guys an update on our pending application status dashboard. Go ahead, David.
Sorry, I had to unmute. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't have too much of echo. Okay, I wanted to give an update on the pending permit application status dashboard. We've given a few presentations. We gave one the last couple of permit streamlining task force meetings, and I presented also to the governing board. So hopefully this won't be too much overlap. I'll go quickly through some of the introductions, but I still wanted to go over that because there may be some people who may not be familiar with it. So on this screen, I want to talk about the dashboard. This was developed in response to the board's initiative to increase our transparency. It provides an online look into the current status or progress of a permit application as it's being processed. And the information is accessible initially internally only, but we recently put it externally through our Find application that was done in June, or actually I think maybe in May. And it allows a user from the outside of the district's firewall to go into Find and to look at a particular facility if they know the application number, or if they browse within the facility in Find, they'll be able to, to find the application in question. So if you click, please, and just to zoom in a little bit, so you can see when you go through the Find application, you're able to then click on the blue highlighted information, which is the application number, and that brings you into what we call the dashboard. Next slide, please. So again, the dashboard basically has two main graphic elements to kind of show the progress of the application as it goes through the process. You have the horizontal one, which is kind of, it shows you the main milestones as it goes through. And then on the right there, there's a gauge that kind of shows you the time elapsed indicator. We kind of highlighted green, yellow, red to show as you get closer to our 180-day targeted turnaround. It shows you how far along we're on the process with respect to time. But then underneath it, there are three different icons there that are highlighted depending as if there's action that's being waited on, either from the facility or from the district. If there's information that's requested and we're waiting for that to be collected and delivered back to us, we'll kind of mark that as a waiting facility action. If there's something internally that we're working on, maybe intra-departmental wise, working with some of our other staff in either planning or compliance, there might be some compliance related issues. These are things that might be tied up. We mark them as awaiting the district action, and we'll highlight them. Right now, the one that's on the screen there, it's highlighted with the facility action. If it was a district action, then our little bird logo would light up and it would show that it's awaiting an action on our part. That way, either internally or externally, you can look at the dashboard and see if it's in progress. That's the first icon that's lit up. That means we have everything we need to process. Or if there's something that's being held up, whether there's some kind of additional paperwork that's needed, some policy call. In some cases, it might be some action required through rulemaking or variance or anything like that. So those are the three main icons. Next slide, please. So we've been working on this for some time. In 2018, we did that initial rollout internally, and we were trying to get data into the system since it's brand new. As we populated the information, then we had some feedback sessions with our staff to make sure that people categorize things the same way in a consistent manner and get used to the interface. After that, we did a few software enhancements to help aid in the data entry and some data verification. And then we launched it in May of this year to go external. So then people on the outside can view the information rather than just us. And that also provided an opportunity to get some additional feedback from people on the outside, the applicants, to see how it's working for them, if it's serving its purpose of being, creating more transparency. So that way, which has actually been beneficial during this COVID period, people want to find out where their applications are. They can go online and take a look at it. They can try to call us as that's the normal route, but if someone is not necessarily available, they can find a quick visual of where the application is, and if there's something that's been holding the application up. It could also serve as a reminder if there was additional information requests that were sent out to the applicant, and maybe they thought maybe it was taken care of, but they see it's still lit up. That means that, okay, they need to follow up and get that information to us. And then vice versa, if they could see, like, if something's been cleared up on our side, the agency side, if we say, hey, we're waiting for a particular evaluation, a source test or a SQL evaluation, and it's still lit, that means, they know that it's still working on that aspect of the application and evaluation. Next slide, please. Okay, so I had shown this earlier in the previous Permit Streamlining Task Force, so I wanted to kind of continue that thought. What we're looking at is trying to find trends in our system to look for areas where there may be bottlenecks. So when we initially rolled out, before we went external, and our first cut, we did a cut in October 2019, and we saw that it was kind of split evenly in terms of applications that were ready to process and in process, and then those that had some kind of action that was awaiting either on our end or an action waiting on the facilities end. Now, since we roll it out internally, we had this tool to be able to focus and hone in on certain things that we can improve upon. And we found that some things were being held up because of policy decisions that were needed. And there's some areas with respect to supervisory review and source testing. Source testing has been brought up quite a bit in terms of our tracking and then working back and forth with our source testing group. So we tried to address those, and by April of this year, we were able to cut down the things that were being held up on our end. Of course, it makes the things being, quote unquote, held up on the facilities end look a little larger as a percentage, and that's mainly because we were focusing on our end of things. Next slide, please. So as we continue on, I wanted to show that we released it externally in May, and I'd like to think that because that information became available, but also because our staff realized that it was available, then we made a concerted effort to try to communicate that with the applicants. And as a result, maybe also because of the COVID situation, the things that are kind of being held up because of on the facilities action, that also went down. So the net result is that we have more applications that are being processed. They have everything they need to be processed. And you can see, especially compared to October 2019, the in-process portion is much, much bigger. And the portions, we're back to like a 50-50 split between things that are awaiting an action from the district's end and awaiting an action on the facilities end is again about roughly in half, which I think is kind of reflects a good balance of items. We would like to get as many things in process as possible, but permitting is not as straightforward as maybe some people would like to think. It's convoluted. There's a lot of things going on, and the project process has a lot of different stakeholders involved. So there's always going to be some things that are not completely straightforward and clear up front. So there's some back and forth, and I think that reflects that here. We don't necessarily know what the ideal split would be, but we recognize that this is better. More things that are ready to be processed is better. Next slide, please. So I want to kind of show just a snapshot in terms of further deep dive into those charts to see which particular areas that we initially had to focus on. And this was the snapshot back in October. And in general, I'd say you can see that the AI request, that's the additional information request, that's typically going to be the largest contributor in terms of things that are waiting action on the facility side. Things on the district side, the things that we have a little more control over are things like supervisor manager review, source test review, and policy review. And so we tried to focus on those areas to try to cut down on the things that were identified as actions that were awaiting follow-up. So next slide, please. If you take a look further into the April snapshot, the additional information requests had gone down a little bit. That's probably a reason why the percentages that are waiting follow-up from facilities has gone down a little bit. We do have our concerted effort to address source testing. We have the equate, I apologize, I can't remember what equate stands for, but it's basically looking at automating incoming source tests so that they get sent to the proper channels. What we discovered early on is that source tests, sometimes they get sent to either compliance or engineering or source testing directly. And there was a handoff issue occurring that caused a lot of them to be somewhat delayed. So that's been a concerted effort. I think there's another working group meeting tomorrow going over that. And they're looking to automate that process and have a central repository for the source tests. And you can see the source testing awaiting on the facility side, that's conducting as well as providing protocols and tests. That's a large contributor. And then on our side, in terms of processing it, that's it's a smaller percentage, but relative to all other ones, it's still a contributor that we think we can have some control over. If you can, next slide, please. And then I'll show highlight the recent snapshot. And this is kind of reiterates the points that were being made, that the supervisor manager review has become a larger contributor in terms of applications that are not actively being processed. Amir didn't mention this part of it, but part of the reasons behind the supervisor manager, I'll say shortfalls, because we had some retirements in addition to transfers, but there was also hiring freeze because of the COVID situation. So that's left us a little shorthanded. And as we fill those positions back, the people coming in, of course, don't have the same institutional knowledge as their predecessors. But again, as Amir mentioned, we think we're on a good path forward to starting to address that, at least that end of things, and clean up space. But what I would emphasize is that using this dashboard, it allows us to get some numbers behind our maybe our presumptions in terms of what things are causing applications maybe to be not as fast as we like them to do, or contributing to areas where things get better. And when we look at these things, it kind of gives us a good affirmation that we're working in the right areas. And in general, it's been very useful. So we did launch it in May, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to get some good feedback from you guys in terms of how much this has been a benefit, because you guys are our larger users and larger audience in terms of providing applications to us. And we're relying a lot on word of mouth in terms of the use of the tool. We do communicate on the webpage, and with COVID being as it is, it's harder for us to do outreach for use of the tool. But whenever we have a chance, we try to bring it up and point applicants in the direction of looking on Find, and then looking at this tool, so that people are more aware of it, as well as its usefulness. And so I kind of want to open it up for discussion, and if there's any improvement suggestions, if you have used it and things that you find useful. We're going to continue to use it as far as a metric tracking device and identifying potential bottlenecks, and continue to provide updates to this task force, as well as to our upper management. So with that, any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have one, David,
Mhm.
or several. I commend you on your PowerPoints, on your PowerPoint presentation. Very attractive, but it doesn't tell me anything. I'm looking at the pie charts on slides 19 and 20, awaiting district action, awaiting facility action in process. It doesn't tell me what we're looking at. How many permit applications are we looking at? And then as you went through slides 21 through, 24 or 5, on your other charts there, the number of permit applications in process, 41% or 52 or 57% engineering evaluation, and administrative processing, percent of how many? What are we looking at? Supervisor management reviews, 8%, 10% of what? Of what number? That, I think that's, for me at least, that's the kind of information that would be meaningful for us.
Okay. Well, the working inventory numbers come from the charts that Amir presented earlier on. So it's a percentage of those totals. So these are snapshots at any given time. And so, example, if you're looking at the November one, then the November chart, that represents the total there. If I'm going to scroll on my own screen to see what that would be. But you see November is about 3,300. So it's a percent of that.
So for 41% of engineering permits, you said that you're going for a range of 3271, or I'm sorry, 2250 to 2500. So it would be a percent of several thousand permits then?
Yes, but yeah, the number I think you're looking at is the less PCs numbers. So it's probably roughly the same, except a good portion of the percentage that is, we call awaiting facility action, is awaiting for the construction to be completed. So the percentages in the pie charts are reflective of the total working inventory. So that's more of the 32 to 3,300 number that we've been seeing recently, rather than 2,500 number.
Bill, for all practical purposes, use 3,300 as the total inventory, because the categories that we're showing here, it could be both for the applications that have been issued a permit to construct or the applications are awaiting action by us. So when we say 10% is under supervisory manager review, so 10% of the 3,300, about 300 applications, we have that we're working on currently to get them out the door.
Okay, well, at least I've got a reference number then. Okay, well,
Sure.
yeah, thank you.
The other thing too is, the reason why I'm displaying them, kind of in these larger numbers and as percentages, is because we're taking, the first look at it, the first cut to look, okay, what areas do we want to focus on closer? And so as we identify the things that we have more control over, those are the ones we're going to want to maybe break down a little bit further and try to monitor and then manage those down to lower numbers. Those that we may not have as much control over, like things that require EPA review or CEQA, that's a big, although that's a smaller percentage. Those we may not track as closely. We'll still track them, but it doesn't really help us if we dive deeper into those because we don't have much control over those. It's the areas that we have control over, the ones we want to minimize, so we can find out really what's an ideal level that we should be shooting for.
All right. Our next person in the queue is Allison Torres. Go ahead, Allison.
I had to click. Can you hear me okay? Click on
We can hear you.
time. Okay. Okay, great. The added steps are very helpful.
Uh-oh, you're breaking up.
Yeah.
One thing that we have noted is, can you hear me better?
Yeah.
It's a
Hello?
little bit better. Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, one thing that we have noticed is we had a few applications where the system shows that they're closed, but they're actually still in supervisor review. And I don't know if that was just some inconsistency with the way it integrates with your internal system, but I was wondering if there was anything that could be done to address that because it can't be reversed. And when we look at those applications, they're basically showing that they're closed, but they're actually still pending review.
So are you looking at the dashboard?
Yeah, find in the dashboard where it shows those different steps, it says closed.
Okay, so closed.
I mean, I think, yeah, go ahead.
That's a great comment. So maybe Allison, if you can maybe call David.
Well, yeah, I can follow up a little bit on that. What's happened is, well, say pre-COVID, the turnaround time in the post-processing was quicker. So what we did is we added into the dashboard, but you won't see it at the top. You'll see it in the detail. I didn't cover that part in the earlier because I cut the presentation down a little bit, but in the dashboard, we have the graphical icons, but then at the very bottom, there's the very detailed identification of every step, a lot of which are internal computing steps. It's just kind of a ledger of the things that occur internally that don't have as much meaning, except maybe in this case, because there's little steps that occur in terms of batch processing and mail out and things like that. So we added a couple codes there. So what you'll probably see is that it's completed on our end in terms of the evaluation and approval. So it's marked closed, but in the details, it shows you kind of whether or not it's been mailed out or not. So that's probably what happened there. I mean, there could be some other cases, but we discovered that occurred quite frequently as we were going into the COVID period, and we had a little slower turnaround in the post-processing. So we changed the category a little bit to kind of get a little more granularity. So you can see that even though we finished our evaluation, maybe you didn't get the permit in hand because it's still going through a few internal processes to archive and to print and mail out the permits. So most likely that's the case, but we can look at specific other cases if we need to do a little more.
Yeah, I think in this case, it was the permit engineer tagged it as that they recommended the approval of the PCPO, but it was still going through supervisor review, where in other cases I've seen the permit engineer will say submitted for supervisor review. And so I think it is, as you mentioned, in those granular details, but because it was flagged as approving the PTC, it was closed out, but it hasn't even gone to that batch mailing process yet because it's still technically in supervisor review. So I can email you the application numbers. I just think it would be helpful for consistency, at least for the facility when we're trying to check status. In that case, we're kind of expecting the permit in the mail where it was actually, or it still is, in supervisor review.
Allison, this is Amir. I thank you for your comments. I mean, this is the type of comments that we would like to receive so we can figure out what needs to be fixed. Now, just to let you know, we have two types of comments that goes into our detailed analysis portion. I mean, there is system generated, and then there is also engineer inputted. So certain programs that we have, as soon as you finish it up, for example, if the engineer puts in the data in another one program, it automatically generates a tag that says, okay, engineer has completed the application. By no means that means that the application is ready to go out. So best part of it is when we actually, if you're looking at the diary, I would recommend that look at the portion that talks about applications being mailed out. That's when you really know that the application was finished up and was mailed out. But said that, let's talk offline. We want to hear your comments. We want to see, what the concerns are, and if we can improve it, you have my word, we will make it better.
Okay, that's great. And then one other comment, for a Title V facility, does the system show that it's been submitted to EPA for review, or how does it flag that in FIND?
They could tag it, if there's a they can tag it as awaiting a EPA review, but that's a manual step to Amir's point. So it's incumbent on the engineer to mark it that way.
Okay, thank you.
Much like it would be for like CEQA review or other agency review.
So now let me ask you guys this question, because I have real interest in this dashboard, as you can imagine. Have you talked with Allison? Have you talked with the engineers, and the engineers saying it's in the EPA, but the dashboard doesn't reflect that?
No, actually, I'm still waiting on a couple to go to EPA. I was just curious if I were to check the dashboard at a future date, if it would tell me that that it's been submitted to EPA in the dashboard. I mean, right. Usually we do get a notification from permitting that it's been submitted to EPA, but just in case, I wanted to know if the dashboard would reflect that step.
Okay, well, like David said, there is a manual entry for it, but we just got to make sure that the folks are making sure it's done. But thank you for the comment. That helps a lot.
Thank you.
I would note one other thing is we use FIND to interface with our dashboard. FIND represents information that's 24 hours delayed. So if someone calls you and says, hey, I just did it and I updated it, it won't be reflected in FIND until the next day. So just in case someone is really aggressive in looking at their updates, they won't appear for 24 hours. And that's just quality assurance on the IAM side.
All right, our next question is from CYK, which I'm going to venture to guess is Carol Kaufman. Go ahead, Carol, if you're able to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So I want to say thanks for the presentation, David. And I really do appreciate the dashboard. We discovered it during the middle of the year, and it really helped for some of our applications. And I wanted to kind of echo what Allison mentioned, though, too, is that we were tracking the progress of the application, and it looked like it was closed, but we hadn't heard on the status of it, and we hadn't received it. So I didn't realize that there were more details, so I'll have to check into that. I think we do have one application in, so we'll check some of the progress of that. And I'm wondering also, I think I might have asked this before and you probably answered it, but is it possible for the permit, the final permit, to be emailed to us as well? So that way we just don't wait for it in the mail, because a lot of us aren't in the office, but is it possible to get a final copy by email, which would help close out that process maybe faster?
Carol, this is Amir. Good talking to you and good hearing you. Yes, we are looking into it. If when we get completely automated, your question would be, we would have done it automatically. But at this point, we're doing it on a case-by-case basis. If somebody needs a permit, we're emailing it. We don't have a system in place yet that can automatically email the permit to the facility. We're looking into it. It's a little bit more complicated than just us pushing a button. How difficult can it be? Well, the system is designed to go on paper. It wasn't designed to go on an email. So if you want your permit electronically and if you request it, we can hopefully send it to you electronically. But we're doing it only on a case-by-case basis, and we're looking into see if we can do it sooner than later. We are, as David, I think David Hawk will go over as part of our automation. We are looking into the whole automating the entire system, but when that happens, we're just going to walk away from paper completely. But for now, we still have to rely on actually printing it on paper and then scanning it and then sending you guys a copy. So bear with us. We're not there yet, but we know we have to get there and we're working on it. It's just that, things got slowed down a little bit this year.
Okay, no, greatly appreciate it. And just wondering, what is the time that it takes for the approval and then the time that it's posted actually on fines? Because a lot of times we can click on that view button and see the actual permit. So I'm just wondering what that period is.
That's a great question. You're the first one who ever asked us, so we have to get back to you.
Okay, because that would help too. I mean, if it's posted right away, maybe then that would be really good. So it's like an email, right?
Yeah, well, like I said, we have to go to the permit. We're printing the permit, and then we have to scan it. And I'm not sure who does the scanning and how long does it take to scan before it's actually be available for folks to take a look at it.
Okay, all right, thanks. And then my last comment for now. Oh, okay. I had just a question, just a little feedback. As our permit application goes through, we do check the box at the bottom that says we'd like to take a look at the draft. And sometimes we don't see that necessarily. I mean, it's minor because the permits, if we catch it in time and we'll take a look at it prior to it's being totally finalized. But I think that's just some feedback. Again, it's a little box that we would like, to review it before it gets to the supervisor or even finalized. So.
Well, okay. Thank you for bringing it up to my attention. We will speak with the individual teams, making sure that they take a look at the 400A form and make sure we are sharing the final permit with you guys before we finalize it.
Okay, I know they're really trying to speed them out the door. So anyway, but thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Sure, no problem.
And Sean Chu just raised his hand. Go ahead, Sean. Sean, you should be able to unmute yourself. Go ahead,
Yes.
Sean.
Yes. So, yeah, my question is, I think I asked this question before, but with the COVID situation, some of us are working from home for permit application signing. We would like our managers to e-sign. Does AQMD allow digital signatures yet?
Versus a wet signature. I think we allowed it during the initial phases of the process, but let me double check that for you, Sean. Right now, I think the requirement is still to have a wet signature, but let me get back to you guys. And if it is, we will notify. We will probably post it on our permit page that we're now accepting. So keep an eye on that permit page, and then if you don't see anything, we're still looking for the wet signature. But if we change our policy, we'll put a statement in there that now we're now accepting digital signature for the applications. I'm sorry we didn't get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
And that's it for our, one more question. Joe Hauer. Go ahead, Joe. You can unmute yourself.
Thanks, Jason. And I would add my thanks. I think there's been a lot of enhancements that have been made to these systems that really are quite helpful. I guess I will also reiterate what one of the prior speakers said, that we've had one recent situation where we checked the box that says we want to see the permit before it's issued. And not only did that not happen, but the permit that did get issued was totally unacceptable. It required us to shut down 2 boilers as of January 1st with no other options, even though the rule underlying it provided some options. So really would like to see that followed. And I don't know if you have a process to make sure it gets followed, but I would urge you to do that.
Joe, this is the process. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. A message received. We'll make sure that if you have checked the box, you will get a copy before it's finalized.
Thank you very much. Also, I guess while I have the floor, wondering if we know what's going to happen with the CPP exam this year.
Good question. We haven't really finalized it yet. It really all depends on where we are with the COVID situation. We got to give a test, but we can't bring people into the building. And I know there are organizations that do they do proctor examinations. We didn't really have time to look at it last year, but we're going to be taking a look at it this year, see if it's a possibility to do that. I know for recruitment purposes, we're using a company out there that's going to do the proctoring. So perhaps we can use the same thing, but we haven't made a decision one way or the other. We're still a couple of months away from the actual test, but let me put it on the list of our stuff to do. Boy, this list is getting longer.
It is. That's why we pay you the big bucks.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thanks, Amir. And
no problem.
I think that's all I had. Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Joe. And one more question from Bill Pierce. Hold on just a second.
Everyone.
Hi, Bill.
I just want to follow up on something Carol had mentioned about the posting of permits. is the district posting all the permits now on Find when the application is closed at some point in time? Or, because historically it's sort of been left up to the engineer on whether that was done or not. But I guess I was just curious if that was part of the process now, that eventually that permit would get posted to Find as part of the closing out that application process.
You know, Bill, Find is basically encompasses lots of other divisions. So I'm not sure whether the Find, whether Find looks at the information that is being posted by the our information management when it comes to the permits, or is it looking at us for posting? And now Title V, we have a little bit more control over it. So we're posting all the Title Vs ourselves. But for the individual permits, I have to get back to you on that one.
Yeah.
Unless there's somebody from IM on the call that can answer that question.
I believe it gets posted after it gets sent down to records and
Oh, really? Okay.
point. We can still follow up on that, but then that's all the command and control permits that are listed by application. As Amir said, the Title V, the facility permit process is a bit different, since those don't go with those individual applications. It stays with the facility.
So, Bill, if it has to be scanned by by another division, then it really comes down to the workload of that group. So they try to have the information on the Find as quickly as possible. But again, we've been sort of slowed down in the whole process because of COVID.
And it's only the permits to operate that get posted, not the permits to construct. I don't know if that was a factor in this case, but again, we can.
I don't know, and that was just the question, because I know historically, I mean, in the old system, it was like hit and miss, and I guess my question was more: is it just part of the formal process now under Find? And so I guess that's just what I was trying to determine.
Bill, let us take a look at it, and we'll bring back the answer for you guys in our next meeting. And we're going to see how long, and then we actually can take a look at it and see how much does it actually take, how long does it actually takes to get that permit. Maybe have some statistical data.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
All right. I do not see any other questions, so we can move on to our next topic.
All right, great. So if there is no questions from the board, from the committee or the public, David Hawk, Supervising Engineer in Automation and Administration, we're given an update on our online filing process.
Thank you, Amir. Paul, if you could go to slide 25, I think it is. Was going to give kind of a past, present, and future on our online and automation efforts. We've got a couple more topics we want to cover. And we're running a little short on time, so I'll try to go kind of quick and maybe focus on the present and future a little more. As you probably know, we've had the 222 registrations online for a good part of this year. The 3 modules constitute about 80% of the 222 registrations that are required, and that's the reason we've put those online. And like the dry cleaner, spray booth, and gas station modules, they provide all the information online, they pay online, and they're issued their registration online as well. Next slide, please. This shows a kind of a brief timeline and the activity. That last bar, you can see it's actually closer, almost to 300, I believe, in the last month or so since we made this chart. The highest activity for the 222 is with the negative air machines. The other 2 are contributing a little bit, but possibly affected by the COVID situations. As you probably know, the dry cleaners have a deadline coming up in about 2.5 weeks to remove their perk machines and replace them with hydrocarbon or something else. We've been getting about, on average, between 2 and 3 of those per week online for the last 6 or 7 weeks, I believe. So that activity has picked up a little bit. Next slide, please. What's in development? We're kind of constantly releasing new versions of the programs, which kind of go unnoticed, but whether it's for adding additional makes and models of the equipment types to making small fixes provided by our users or internal users. The emergency IC engine registration is very close to being released, maybe another month or so. We're in the final stages of testing and polishing that up. So hopefully sometime in January, we'll get that released to the public. The other big update is the application workflow, if you will. We've documented the as-is process and have incorporated some of the things we've learned during the expanded teleworking. Next slide, please. This might be a little hard to see. You might be able to see it better on paper or on your screen. This is an example of the workflow process. I believe it's around 20 or 30 pages in total. What we did was document the entire process of an application from cradle to grave, basically. Using the standard flowchart diagramming, the roles are color coded, whether it's clerical, managerial, engineer, or supervisor. And it does incorporate, like I said, from cradle to grave, permits to construct, permits to operate, plans, ERCs, everything, and then every possible scenario within each one of those, whether it needs to have a source test, a CEQA document, Title V review, et cetera. And in that documentation, our IAM team has indicated opportunities for automation. And with that, we would take that opportunity to use either an off-the-shelf program, a custom program, or maybe a combination of the two to automate the process from start to finish, all the correspondence, the calculations, the data capture, the generating permit, and then create a final file that would be sent down to records. Obviously, this is a pretty big project to tackle, and we will be working on it throughout the coming year, and hope to release or start using pieces of it as we get those complete, rather than waiting till the whole project is complete to release it. And that completes the presentation. We're happy to answer any questions.
I do not see any questions at this time. If we want to keep moving on with the presentation. Thank you, Dave. Paul, if you can put the slides back up. Next slide. All right, go back a slide, please. All right, good morning with 5 minutes left in the morning. My name is Jason Aspel, Assistant Deputy Executive Officer. But this morning I'll take a moment to give you an update on our permit processing handbook. What we're doing with this is it's an update to our handbooks, which are about 30 years old, and we're doing it to bring it up to date, with current practices. Obviously, we've had a lot of new rule requirements that get implemented into our permitting process. So why we started this effort is we want to use it as a tool for new staff to ensure they're not only processing these permits efficiently, but they're doing it consistently across, from engineer to engineer and between teams for various pieces of equipment. But then also with that, it's also, can provide, the public some insight on, what we look at during our permit processing or that process, so they can provide, us the information we need to make that go a lot more smoothly and quicker. So this handbook isn't meant to be a policy setting document. We're not intended to be, legally bound by what is or is not in it. Where policy is mentioned, we will make that reference to the outside document or the guidance document. But, it is just meant to be a tool. Next slide, please. So as we started out on this, we, started out with an outline. So we had some structure as the teams developed their various equipment related chapters, but it's going to start out with the introduction and then break out into the equipment specific chapters. Next slide. What we originally started off with our commitment is to do our front chapters, our overview sections, and that consists of right now application overview, application types, and submittal considerations when an applicant is submitting their applications. So we feel that will be very helpful. And also new source review. Regarding new source review, we did have to take some resource considerations into account because new source review is in the process of changing. So, we don't want to get overly in depth on that only to, change it later on. So we're doing more of an overview at this point. So our original commitment for equipment chapters was these 5 chapters: abrasive blasting, dry cleaners, emergency IC engines, gas refueling, and spray booths. As we work through this process, we kind of refined that goal and split out some chapters as they started to be drafted. The spray enclosure chapter was quite lengthy, and we found a natural break to break it out into fundamentals and special cases. What those special cases are, like thermal spraying, resin spraying, powder coating, those type of special cases. Also, for abrasive blasting, we went back to the old format and are going to be splitting it up into open and unconfined. So right now we're going to be moving forward with unconfined. And then we have our dry cleaners and service stations. So next step, please, or next slide. But what we're presenting today is our first couple chapters is fundamentals of for spray enclosures and gasoline service stations. So I did mention, we started with, with a high level table of contents to kind of guide the drafting of these chapters, and it kind of takes you through the permit processing processes. If a new engineer picks this up, they get a background on the equipment and then what they need to process that permit. So for gasoline service stations, it will take you through what phase 1, phase 2 vapor recovery is, how that process works, balance versus vac assist, gives you a strong background, and then they can then process a permit. And then also getting back into the numbers of these 2 chapters we're starting with, about 15% of our applications this year were service station related, and then 8% were spray booth related. So there was a little method to the madness. This is a large portion of our permit processing efforts. Next slide, please. So here's just some sample pages of what this is going to look like. We get a lot into the emission factors of how emissions are calculated. We don't get into the depth of certifications for the various vapor recovery systems, but we do point the reader in the direction of where they can get more information on that. But we do list all our sample permit conditions that a permit processors might need as they work through this process, and then explain, the basis for those permit conditions. Next slide. So moving on to spray booth fundamentals, as I said, this chapter is a little bit more of a beast. It gets really detailed. Obviously, we have a lot of different types of spray booths, but next slide. As you can tell, we updated our figures from the original handbook where we could, but we get a lot of it into the detail of the different types of spray booths, downdraft, side draft. We still have a discussion on permit unit boundaries, but then again, we get more into ventilation calculations, material versus coating VOC calculations, transfer efficiency, a lot more of the detail that gives a user a strong fundamentals of what a spray booth and spray coating operations are. We also get into combustion emissions, how to calculate those, health risk, and all of that. Next slide. So, looking forward, we're trying to get these initial chapters out more or less by the end of the year. Looking ahead, I said we broke out confined abrasive blasting, so we'll be finalizing that along with dry particulate controls, bag houses, crematories. Again, that emergency IC engine we pushed out a little bit just because it proved to be a little more complex. So we're making sure we get that right before moving forward with that one. And we have a whole list of additional chapters that are going to be coming along down the line. Next slide. So today, we're not just showing you screenshots, but we are looking for feedback on this. These are very technical manuals getting into emission calculations, but we are seeking volunteers for those who want to review the gasoline dispensing facility and the spray booth fundamental chapters. We're looking for your feedback on, is this level of detail enough? Does it flow? Is there anything we need to clarify? Is there, additional resources we can include, or anything we missed? Just looking for feedback before we finalize these chapters. Again, these are not intended to be, finalized forever. These are going to be living documents. Rules change. We want to go back and update them as necessary. But we mentioned before, we do have a lot of new engineers, a lot of new staff moving around. We want to be able to provide them the tools to do their job. And, also if, somebody needs to, help with some of the effort, they can pick up this book and help process permits. Next slide. So I guess before we move on to other business, did we have any questions on these chapters?
Judy York, I'll volunteer to review. Needless to say, I've been instructing for 25 years, I really appreciate what you're doing, and it's a big undertaking, but it's super important for consistency and just so people understand what is all involved there. So it's really great, and I'd be happy to look at it and help with any feedback I can give.
Thank you very much, Judy. I didn't want to assume, but I figured you'd be throwing your hat in the ring. Like I said, thank you for volunteering your time.
Yes, thank you.
Jason?
Yes, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I had a question. On one of your earlier slides, you said that I think gas stations represent 15% of your permit activity, and then you said spray booths. I couldn't tell whether you said 8% or 80%. Must be 8, huh?
8%. Otherwise, we'd be in a lot of trouble with
Right.
18 engineering staff in our coding group. That is 8, as in yes, 7.
8, right. Yeah. My next question in slide 33, and I think I know the answer. You have gasoline refueling. Is that going to address the on-demand mobile fueling activities, which is relatively new to you folks?
That is a very good catch. But yeah, the reasoning for the wording change is right now we're just focusing on the stationary service stations. We do mention that mobile fueling on demand, or that is starting to pop up, and we have ongoing rulemaking for. That will be separated. That will either be separated out into another chapter or be added to this chapter later.
Yeah, because that same slide you do mention gasoline service stations, and then you had gasoline refueling as well. And I think that's an excellent addition because that you're going forward with that. So as you're getting more information, certainly it'll at least be a good starting point for that industry segment here that is evolving.
Yes, yeah, we agree. There's just there's different factors that come in, when you're dealing with essentially a service station on wheels that changes locations. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bill, we're very concerned with it. That's why we're writing actually new rules for it. So as soon as the rules are finalized and they're on the books, then we can figure out how we're going to do the permitting for them.
Right. Yeah.
The chapters for it.
Yeah. I've been following that since the very beginning. So.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Next, I believe we have David Rothbart. Go ahead, David.
Thank you for the presentation. As far as volunteers, when you get to the IC engines, I'm happy to volunteer to look at that section since we deal with those a lot. Just confirmation as far as the purpose of the document, is that something that will be available to everybody? Because I see that as a very useful tool for people filing for permits to know what you're looking at.
Yes, it is going to be a public document, when we finalize it. I think some are going to get more from it than others, but again, it's a useful tool.
Great, we appreciate it.
Yeah, David, I just want to add another caveat to it. It is a guideline. It is a manual, and as all you guys know, each individual application is very different from the next one, and it's very specific. So just because, we approached it and we looked at one section of that we thought it was the majority of the process, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to cover the entire range of applications that will come in on that particular operation. So it's there to provide some background, but we reserve the right to make changes as necessary. This is just to provide some initial information and data background to, for a person who's not familiar with our operation. But we reserve the right to make changes as necessary.
I understand, and I'm sure the lawyers will have a little disclaimer somewhere on the document.
Oh, believe me, there's going to be gigantic disclaimers at the top of this document.
Yeah.
I have one more question, if you don't mind. Under additional chapters, you have printing operations. Can anyone there elaborate on that? That's a pretty that's one of your legacy permits. So is there something new coming down or what?
Nothing new, just pretty much, again, not only with the new engineers, we have a lot of people retiring, but preserving some of the institutional knowledge with the printing industry and how to process those permits. But there's no new operations coming down the line that we foresee at this time.
Okay, thank you.
But no, I mean, just in, I've reviewed a lot of the draft chapters we have already. I can tell you, in my time as a permit processing engineer. I never did a gas station, but reading through this, I can now, go through those fairly easily. It really takes you through the process. So we're really looking forward to releasing this. And if we have any other volunteers, you don't have to do it at this time. You can send an email to David Ono if you do want to volunteer. Oh, looks like we have one more question.
It's me,
Carol.
Jason. Sorry, it's more of a comment. So no, I think we're going to look forward to this new handbook or to help us out. And I'm thinking the emission factors then that are put into the handbook, that will translate to the future like CTR, like our emissions reporting as well then? Like those can be used for that process as well?
I mean, we're going to have to go through and see what each of these chapters looks like. I mean, for the gas station ones, these are fairly universal, that we've been using and they're well established. I think as far as the other ones go, I think we only have abrasive blasting. And again, this is kind of what pushed out the emergency ICE a little bit as we kind of go through that process, but we may need to talk to our friends in AER and other
Okay.
reporting, make sure they're on board with that. Because
Okay,
again,
I appreciate
it's a tool. We don't want to override any existing processes. We just want an engineer to be able to process a permit.
Okay, yeah, no, I appreciate that. I was looking for the consistency between the different,
I understand where you're
so
coming
that's good.
from. And
Thank you.
We'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, Carol, I just added it to the list of my stuff. So
Short list.
it's all good. Anything that we can do to speed up the process, that's our goal.
All right. I don't see any other questions, so we're going to move to the other business portion of the presentation. If any of our participants wish to bring up any issues, just simply raise your hand. If you're a panelist, you can speak up.
This is David Rothbard. I do have one item that I wanted to get some feedback on real quick. We brought this up to permit streamlining, I don't know, a couple of years ago, I think, regarding maintenance and testing hour assumptions and conditions and their consistency. And essentially the situation tends to be when you ask for a permit, you'll get the usual response of the hours a monthly condition needs to usually be, depending on the tier engine, it's like 4.6 hours per month, no more than 50 hours per year. And when we say, can we get some additional hours? Sometimes we have one permit engineer says, how many do you need? We need to minimize it, but we'll work with you. Other responses are, no, you cannot get any more. So I just wanted to bring that up and see if we can get a little bit more guidance and consistency for the permit engineers.
Right. So David, you're right. I thought we answered your question, but thank you again for bringing it up. We do have a policy and procedure in place. It's our policy and procedure number E as in Edward, C as a Charlie, -0209, which describes how we are required or how we're supposed to come up with the conditions. And in that policy, it does allow asking for or deviating from the numbers. And there's a procedure that is set in there. I'm surprised that, I personally thought that, we have already discussed this with the staff, but thank you for bringing it up to our attention. We will make sure that that information is again discussed with the permitting staff so that that won't happen again.
Great, we appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you, David. Let's see if there's any other. I do not see any other items at this time. You want to move over to public comment? we have any members of the public that wish to comment? And there are no hands raised, Amir.
Fantastic. Well, folks, that concludes our since there are no public comments or any other comments by the committee members, that concludes our meeting for today. I want to wish everybody a happy holidays and a happy new year. Hopefully things will get better next year with the introduction of the vaccine, and we'll all be able to meet face to face. I'm looking forward to meeting everyone face to face again. You know, Zoom is great, but you know, the relationships that we have built, there is no, you know, this electronic version does not do it justice. So hopefully everybody we'll all be able to meet next year, and I hope everybody stays safe, and happy new year and happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everyone.
New Year.
Happy holidays.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, bye.
Yeah.
Happy holidays.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you, Joe. Same to you.
Okay.
Everybody
Thanks a lot.
Here, be safe. Great seeing you.
Bye-bye.